The ultimate step-by-step AC writing guide for VCE English language from someone who scored a 50. Let's do this. Hello and welcome. If you're watching this, you're likely a Unit 1-2 or 3-4 VCE English language student. And my name is Richard. I scored a 50 in the subject. I have a process or a step-by-step writing guide when it comes to pumping out high-scoring responses. And I'm going to be walking you through that today. There's going to be two parts to this video tutorial, the content and theory. So I'll walk you through my process and then application. So I'm actually going to pull up the 2019 exam, but we could apply it to any exam, but I'm going to pull up the 2019 exam. It's an informal spoken text. I'm going to show you exactly how I would apply my formula. And if I do that well enough, then you should be able to take that formula and then apply it to whether it's informal spoken, informal written, formal spoken, or formal written texts as well. So with all of that said, I did just want to add a little disclaimer here, which is that I'm not somehow special or gifted. I always had trouble in mainstream English, and it was only in moving to VCE English language when I was given a step-by-step process by my teacher, who was a VCAR examiner at the time, that everything really clicked for me. And so I'm going to walk you through that process and hopefully it's going to click for you as well. So without further ado, let's jump into things. All right, first things first, this is my AC writing guide from my Student Resource Hub. All of my private students get access to the Student Resource Hub, but I'm sharing this with you today. So the AC writing guide, first things first, let's do a little skills breakdown. It's important to understand, hey team, I thought I'd just quickly jump in and let you know we've actually decided to give you free access to the short answer question, AC and essay writing guide over on the website. So if you're viewing this on YouTube, there'll be a link in the description for you to jump over there. If you're already on the website, there'll be a little box for you to pop your email address in and we'll send you access from within the Student Resource Hub. I hope you enjoy. Back to the tutorial. When you're trying to become proficient at AC writing, you want to ask yourself, okay, what does that actually involve? And what are the micro skills that are necessary to clock so that when you actually sit down to write an AC, you have already got everything that you need to execute? You can apply the same thinking to short answer questions and to the essay. You don't just want to sit down and practice. You want to identify, okay, what are the constituent micro skills? What's holding me back at the moment? What have I not been taught, or what do I need more practice in? And then focus, kind of zero in on that in particular. So AC writing, first thing that we need is knowledge of meta language and key language features. So you need to have an understanding of all the meta language in the subject. And for what I recommend to my students is for each metalinguistic term, you want a really simple definition, 1 to 2 sentences, not some 4-page wiffle waffle shebang from the textbook. You want a simple definition. You want an example that demonstrates that meta-language feature in a text so that you know how to spot it if you were to, say, have a text that had it. And then you would also ideally have some notes with respect to what should I say when I find that feature? Because in year 12 in particular, there's only a few marks that get allocated for identifying features. The majority of marks in year 12 come from analyzing features. So what do you find, and then what do you say about what you find? So just a little tip here, VCAR gives us a list on the study design of all the key meta-language terms that you need to know for the subject. Now, if you go to the textbook can teach it to you, but from my experience, it's quite fluffy. It's not super clear what exactly you need to know and also how to apply it. And like I said, you don't just want the definition and example, you want some notes with respect to what do I say when I find it. And so what I would recommend and what my teacher helped me with was having a meta-language cheat sheet. And this is every single meta-language term for the subject in one single doc. And for each term, you can just click on it and it'll bring up exactly what I mentioned before. So definition, example, and then additional notes with respect to how to analyze. Now, if you don't have something like this, I'd recommend you create one for yourself or consider becoming a private student of mine. But this is super useful. You can also, if you had some cue cards, say, or a bank of all the meta language terms like this, it just means you can systematically go through and do your due diligence, making sure that you're confident in each meta language term, as opposed to just having a gut feeling. Do I feel confident? Have I covered everything or not? And not being really certain about, do you have that solid foundation? So that's enough on the meta language side of things. We need to know all of that meta language. It's the building blocks of our responses. If we don't know it, it's going to limit us from the very beginning. And with something like the meta language cheat sheet, you can get on top of the meta language very, very quickly. So don't let that be the thing that holds your ACs back. Now, once we've clocked that, we need to move on to being able to find those meta language features in an actual text. So this is the next step, you might say, in the application process. Once you know all the meta language, and in particular the meta language, what features to maybe expect in various types of texts, you need to be able to find them because, I mean, you can know the definition, you can come up with an example, but unless you have practice finding them in texts, then you're kind of screwed from there as well. So we need to know the metalang, we need to know how to find them. Next is we need to be able to find high quality, salient or interesting features or examples in text from across the 4 text categories. So here's a little bit of theory for you. There are 4 major text categories. So you can have an informal spoken text, you can have an informal written text, you can have a formal spoken text, and you can have a formal written text. And for each of those text categories, there's a certain set of features that you can expect to find in the text. So for example, in a formal spoken text, you want to be able to quickly load up a short list of, say, 10 really juicy features that you can rely upon finding in 90% of formal spoken texts. And then that way you can really attack the text as opposed to frantically trying to find anything to analyze. Same goes for, say, an informal written text. You want to have a short list of 10 features. It's going to be different to the formal spoken text. A short list of salient features, central features to the text, interesting features that allow you to flex your knowledge for VCAR. You want to be able to just load them up as soon as you read the intro to the text and you know what text category it is. You want to have already a very solid understanding of what features can I expect in the text, and then you go and attack it very quickly. And many of you would already know this by now, but the subject is very tight for time, right? So you can't afford to sit there and think and look. You need to be able to attack the text with a lot of purpose. And that ability comes from, and the ability to move with pace under test conditions, it comes from preparation, and in particular, this kind of short list of features. Now, for me and my students, if you are a private student of mine, then you will have access to all of my analysis cheat sheets. So this is just the student resource hub here. And the analysis cheat sheets are up here. So there's one for each text category, as well as when I do find those features in a text, what do I say about them? And then I've demonstrated that for each of the 10 features in an actual VCAR exam so that you have essentially cheat codes for writing a high scoring response. You have the fundamentals down and then you just need to actually apply it and put it into full sentences. To do something like that, now to be clear here, you don't need these necessarily. They'll make the subject much easier for you, but you could create your own. Right? So you could create your own analysis cheat sheet or your short list of high quality features for each text category, and also some notes with respect to what you might say about them. From there, if we come back to the AC writing guide, we then need to become proficient at analyzing those examples by breaking them down with Teal. So once we find, let's say we've got our short list of really good features to look for, we get given a text, boom, we find them, we attack the text, we find them very quickly. We need to become proficient at breaking those language features down with the model that I use is Teal. I'll walk you through it in a moment. It's not the mainstream Teal, just to be clear, but it's just a framework for what do I say when I find the good features. And so I like having a system or a process to know what to say to impress VCAR. And so I'll walk you through that in a bit. But so once we've found good features, we need to know what to say about them. And then last but not least is our general flow or expression or the structure of our piece. So expressing our Teal breakdowns in full sentences and body paragraphs. So you can hypothetically find all of the really, really juicy features. You could know roughly what to say about them, but then the final piece of the puzzle is actually getting it out into full sentences, having a really well-structured intro and body paragraphs, so the VCAR examiner's experience in reading your piece is nice and smooth, and they're just wowed by what you've created. So I encourage you as a student in the subject to keep this framework in mind so that whenever you get feedback, let's say you complete an analytical commentary and you get feedback from your teacher or from your tutor, having a look at this diagram and going, okay, which of those micro skills is holding me back? Which of these do I need to work on in particular? Because you might get feedback that your analyses are really, really good, but you need to find better features, right? And then so from there, you know, okay, maybe I should work on my analysis cheat sheets. Maybe I should work on that checklist or that short list of my top 10 features to look for in those 4 text categories. Alternatively, you might get feedback saying that you have found fantastic features, but you haven't analyzed in depth enough, or you haven't been specific enough with your analyses. And then that lets you go, okay, I need to practice finding features, but then drilling down and really fleshing out my analysis is with a framework like Teal that I'll walk you through in just a moment. So that is the AC skills breakdown. It's a nice container for the rest of this video and also for you to just understand what goes into a high scoring AC. Something else that I'd like to run through very quickly is this diagram here. So I want to draw a distinction, short answer questions and analytical commentaries. If you can do short answer questions, I meet a lot of students who feel pretty confident in short answer questions, but then analytical commentaries, they have a lot of trouble with. They are cut from the same cloth. They're the same fundamental skill of analysis. You want to think about short answer questions as being directed analysis. So VCAR is giving you a text and then saying, hey, look at this part or look for this type of feature and then tell us what's going on. Whereas analytical commentaries are undirected analysis. So VCAR gives us a text and then gives us more free reign to talk about what we want to. Now, that can be great because we can play to our strengths, but of course it can also be a little bit overwhelming because we don't have as much structure. The reason why I wanted to show you this diagram is this is a nice framework for understanding what exactly we're doing when we're analyzing a text, because I think it can be a little bit confusing until you have a visual like this to guide you. So this is your eye, the language user, or it might be the person in the text, whatever. These are the contextual factors. So these are all of the things that surround the text that influence our language choices. So it could be the audience, it could be the text type, it could be the setting, it could be the function, it could be the purpose, the social purpose, whatever it is. These influence our language choices. They result in us choosing some language features over others, and that results in a register, be it formal or informal or somewhere in between. So just personally, I use 5 terms to describe register. I will go, let's say formal is over here. I'll go formal, moderately formal, mixed, moderately informal, and then informal. Those are the terms that I use. Now you can be a little bit flexible from there, but I think that's a good starting point. Now, when we're analyzing a text, what we're actually doing is finding juicy language features within the text and then asking ourselves, what is the effect of this language feature? And you can think about this as like you're kind of zooming into the language feature and then you want to read the text with and without the language feature. So let's say it's a little bit of emphasis or it might be an adjective or something like this. You want to read the text with and without the feature that you're analyzing. So you can either remove it completely or swap it out for something else. And then you want to ask yourself, okay, what did that language feature do right there? So that's kind of, I call that a comparison test with my students. So you want to run a little comparison test, get clear on what the effect is. And then you want to ask yourself, okay, if I zoom out from here, how does this relate to one of the contextual factors or how does it relate to the register somehow? So just an example, this is a nice simple one that I use with my students when I'm first describing this model. Let's say that you go to a party and you're making some new friends and you're going to use some teenage slang. So the language feature that you're using is the teenage slang. The effect might be that it kind of signals that you're laid back, you're casual, and that you're also a teenager. And we might say, well, not only does that contribute to the informal register, but also we might say, well, that can help, say, the social purpose of the text to build rapport and make friends. All right, so that's kind of what we mean by analysis. Find language feature, ask the effect, and then link to contextual factors or register. Now, there isn't one way to skin a cat here, but this is a model that I've used that has really helped me go from being confused in English to then eventually feeling like it was a maths or a science subject. I had a formula to apply and I knew what to do. Now, from here, just a quick tip too. Some students will get feedback that their responses or their analyses aren't in depth enough, and 9 times out of 10, it's because the student is finding a language feature and then trying to link directly to contextual factor or register without first asking, what is the effect? So asking first, what is the effect, and writing something there can help flesh out your analyses and go more in depth. Okay, so we've covered a skills breakdown. We've covered the fundamentals of what it means to analyze something. Now what I'd like to do is actually walk you through my step-by-step process. This is the AC writing guide, and then I'll show you how to use it I'll actually apply it with you in real time to a VCAR exam. So, little disclaimer, no one way to skin a cat. Take whatever your teacher says and take their advice and use it as well. You want to understand your teacher's preferences also and play to that. But all I can share with you is what has worked really well for me and what VCAR really liked, evidently, in me getting a 50. So, step 1, read the text intro and identify the big picture context. So, a lot of students and I actually had a friend who did this in a SAC. When you're under test conditions, I'll just mention here, I've split this up into during reading time and during writing time, so you actually know how to run this script or this process during test conditions. But during test conditions, you can get a little bit overwhelmed and you can dive straight into reading the text. And you just start, you see a couple of speakers, you run, you go. And then all of a sudden you realize you've missed some of the key big picture context because you haven't read the introduction. You have to read the introduction, guys. And the reason why I mentioned this to you, I mentioned before, I had a friend who in a SAC, he did exactly that. He skipped reading the introduction, and the introduction made it clear that the two speakers, one was the mother and one was the kid or the teenager. And so my friend missed that and just thought that they were two friends based on the way that they were speaking to each other. And that's really where a small error, not reading the introduction and understanding the big picture, has kind of screwed the rest of his analytical commentary. So you have to make sure that you read the introduction and then also establish the big picture context. Now, when it comes to establishing the big picture context, this is everything that you'll put in your introduction for your AC, and I'll show you exactly how I structure that in a moment. But many of you will have been given a framework like FARMS or Dr. FARMS or something to that effect, or CRAMPS is another one that I've heard. I personally adjusted that a little bit to create TSSM RAFs. And it just stands for these things here. So text type and then speaker or author. I also think about the potential roles. Is there like a host, a co-host, interviewer, interviewee, mother, son, something like this. Setting, time and location. Mode, spoken or written, register, formal or informal or mixed, audience, who are they, function, and social purpose, what are they as well. We need to get clear on all of that, and you can get clear on most of that just by reading the text intro. So again, do not miss it. Now, just to be clear, I want to link this back here as well. Right, remember before I said the analysis is you're finding features, you're asking what the effect is, and then you're linking it back to contextual factors or register. If you don't identify these in depth correctly, then your analysis is straight away limited from the very beginning. And so this is a really important skill to practice, and you might get feedback on this, but I've certainly had students where I've given them feedback that you're actually finding really good features, but you haven't taken enough time or you haven't had enough practice identifying what the contextual factors actually are across a wide variety of different texts. And so what that means is that even though you're finding good features, because you haven't identified the big picture in depth, it limits the depth of your analysis. So that's a little pointer as well. If you get feedback that your analysis isn't in depth enough, either you're not asking what is the effect and fleshing that out, you're just taking a language feature and linking straight to contextual factor, or you are asking what the effect is and you're fleshing that out, but you haven't identified the contextual factors in enough depth or accurately. Okay, moving on here. So read the text intro and identify the big picture context. Next, step 2, read the text, taking note of features that, one, are standouts or salient. Salient just means kind of important or central, and you're confident in analyzing. So obviously, if you find a juicy feature that stands out to you, but you're not confident in analyzing it, skip it. Don't do it. This is assuming that you're in an assessment of some sort. Now, if you're not in an assessment, definitely challenge yourself in trying to analyze things that you're not confident with, because that's how you become confident in them. Ideally, based on the text type, you can predict a couple of high quality features you can reliably find. This is what I mentioned before about having an analysis cheat sheet, a short list for each of the 4 text categories of key features that are recurring that you can rely upon finding that are also interesting. So for example, once you know the text type is an interview, then you can predict that you'll be able to find different sentence types being used by different speakers. So as an example, the host will likely rely more so on interrogatives than the guest will, given their respective roles. So already, if you, in an intro, if you can see that there's a panel, it mentions that the text is a panel discussion. Let's say it's a formal panel discussion like Q&A, a program like Q&A. Formal panel discussion, that person A or speaker A is the host and speaker B, C, D, blah, 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 they are the guests. You can already, in your mind, load up, okay, I'm going to be able to do a nice analysis on the sentence types being used by the host compared to the guests. And that's something that's interesting. It's also central, and it allows you to demonstrate to VCAR or your teacher you have a solid understanding of different people choosing different language features, in this case, a syntactic language feature, different language features to suit their roles in the text, so to suit one of the contextual factors. Okay, then step 3, begin to mentally formulate your plan. So 3 body paragraphs structured around either subsystems or themes. I get a lot of students asking me how I should structure or how they should structure their body paragraphs. And I want to just be clear, the way you structure your paragraphs isn't actually all that important. What's important is what you put in your paragraphs and the depth of your analysis. So as an example, I scored a 50. I structured mine based on subsystems, but I've also connected with other former students who've scored a 50 who structured it based on themes. So just to be clear, structuring it around subsystems, you might have one main body paragraph focused on phonology and phonological features, one body paragraph focused on lexicology, and maybe one body paragraph focused on syntax or discourse. Whereas themes-wise, you might choose to write one body paragraph on features that relate to the register, one body paragraph on features that relate to, say, the function and social purpose, and then one body paragraph on language features that relate to other contextual factors, be it the audience or the setting or the mode of the text. Again, there's no one way to skin a cat here. You can get a 50 or an exceptional mark doing either. What's really important is choosing the right features and then analyzing them in depth. Okay, so by the end of reading time, you should have a rough idea of how you'll structure your paragraphs, as well as roughly what features you will analyze in each paragraph. So notice, guys, all of this has happened during reading time, ideally, if you have done the necessary prep. You've read the intro of the text, you've read through the text, you understand, you've kind of mentally gone through TSSM RAFs or Dr. Farms or whatever you've been given. You've established the big picture. You know all of the contextual factors that you can potentially be linking back to. You've read the text and begun to identify some of the salient features, and you may have done so by as soon as you know the text category, you've already loaded up your shortlist of high quality features to go looking for. So you've attacked the text and you found, say, roughly 9 language features, right? 3 for 3 body paragraphs. So 3 by 3 equals 9. Quick math. You've already got an idea of which features you're going to be picking out in the text and analyzing. And you've already got an idea of your 3 body paragraphs and how those features are going to slot into each, and roughly what you're going to say about each of those features, linking them background to either a contextual factor or the register. So all of that, ideally we get done in reading time, so that when writing time begins, boom, it's like just unleashing all of the knowledge and all of the prep that you've put in, so it just comes out smoothly onto the page. Now, I'll run you through exactly how to do that. So next, step 4, briefly write a plan. Jot down an outline of your 3 paragraphs and the features you'll analyze. If you're not in test conditions, then you can use the AC planning template to guide your thinking and structure your plan. Now, the AC planning template is only for my private students. I will briefly walk you through what is in it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to give you a visual of the AC planning template just so that you know what we're working with here. So this is the AC planning template here. This is actually a nice visual of what goes into a high scoring analytical commentary. So if you're a private student of mine, then you're able to duplicate this template and use it for every single AC that you write, especially when you're tackling a new text category or a text that you're not familiar with. Going through the AC planning template and really filling everything out is a great way to begin getting familiar with a new type of text before you begin actually writing. The worst thing you can do is see a text and just begin writing an AC. That's not a good plan. So we've got intro and 3 body paragraphs. In our introduction, like I said, we want to lay out TSSM RAFs. Now, just to be clear as well, another reason why I use TSSM RAFs as opposed to Dr. Farms or something like this is I have an intro template. It's in my AC response template. That's also for my private students only, but it's essentially this plug and play template that I use, that I created. I kind of stumbled across it by writing heaps and heaps and heaps of intros. And then I kind of found this really nice order and also the right language to express all of the contextual factors super concisely. I got really good feedback on my teacher, like this flows perfectly. And then I templated it. So that means that I can pump out a high scoring intro in roughly 2 to 3 minutes without ever getting stuck. It's like, as long as I can identify TSSM RAFs, which I usually do in reading time, then I just plug it into the intro template. And now for my students, they'll be able to use the template maybe 2, 3, 4 times, and then the language in the template will start coming to you naturally, and then you don't need it anymore. And it's just the perfect scenario to know that no matter what text you get, boom, 2 to 3 minutes, you've got a high scoring intro, and you can jump straight into your body paragraph. So once we've got that, now, I will just be clear, if you're creating an AC plan under test conditions, you're not going to go into as much depth as I've got in this AC planning template. Under test conditions, the plan that you write is going to be a much more compact and kind of shorthand plan compared to this. So as you can see in my body paragraphs, I've listed, I've got 4 kind of components: a topic sentence, and then 3 language features broken down with teal. That's what these blocks represent. So TEEL, and I'll walk you through what that means in a moment. It's essentially just a method for, or a structure to analyze whatever we find. Now, topic sentence, I would recommend asking your teacher, do they want you to write a topic sentence or not? It's really, there's a little bit of personal preference here. If you do write a topic sentence, keep it simple. It's not going to be the thing that makes or breaks your piece. It's just a nice way to open your body paragraph if your teacher likes it. Now, from there, we have 3 features and we break down those 3 features, and that's literally it. So the quality of your analytical commentary in large part comes down to how smoothly and how accurately and in how much detail you can identify the big picture contextual factors and lay them out in your intro. And then how many really good features can you find and analyze in depth in your body paragraphs. Just to be clear again, under test conditions, you're not going to be fleshing out teal in your plan. You'll just be writing a quick shorthand. Maybe you'll write the line number, the meta language term that you're going to label this with, and then maybe a brief note as to whether you plan on linking it back to either the register or the function or the audience or something like this. That's what I would recommend. If you have time, like I said, and you're fleshing out an analysis for a brand new type of text that you're not familiar with, then using the AC planning template can be really useful. Okay, so once we've got our plan, I would recommend roughly 5 minutes in test conditions on creating your plan. Once you have like a neat plan, 5 minutes into writing time, it just lets you write the rest of your piece much more quickly. So trust me, I've already done plenty of experimentation with this when I was in year 12. When I didn't write a plan or I sacrificed the quality of my plan, my writing later in the assessment would be slower and of a lower quality because I just wasn't as clear on what I was saying. And I would kind of tend to waffle a little bit and go off topic. So think of your planning time, like writing out your plan, say 5 minutes at the beginning of writing time, as an investment in the pace with which you're able to write the rest of your piece and also the quality of the rest of your piece. Step 5, we're then going to write our intro. Again, I would recommend you can either use my intro template if you're a private student of mine or create your own AC intro template. Then once we pump that out in ideally 2 to 3 minutes, we're going to go ahead and write our body paragraphs. So you can have an optional topic sentence. I personally recommend using teal or the teal model to break down, analyze, and present each example. All right. Now I want to show you, I will also mention that if you're a private student of mine, you'll have access to the AC response template. I've already mentioned the intro template that's in there. There's also a template for writing body paragraphs and all of the language you need to kind of express your teal breakdowns and your analyses. I'll demo that for you a little bit later in this tutorial. If you aren't a private student of mine and you're viewing this tutorial on a public platform of some sort, then this part of, or that part of the tutorial, once we get to it, will be skipped for you. But I'll still walk you through the theory. So this is teal. For every language feature that I find in the text that I know is interesting, that I've chosen to analyze, I will break it down into 4 parts. First of all, I'm going to label with the meta language. So that's my meta language term, the T. Then I'm going to give my example. And when I give my example, I want to give a quotation and a line number. Then I'm going to ask, what is the effect of this language feature? Now notice some correlates here, right? I've found my language feature. I've labeled with my term and my example, line number, quotation. Now I'm asking, what is the effect? Let's come back to here. And then I'm going to somehow link it back. So my L is for link back to the big picture, and I've just added this comment here. If you're doing short answer questions, this is where you would link back to whatever's specifically asked for in the question. So you might have a short answer question that's asking for you to find a language feature and relate it back to or explain how it serves the social purpose, right? This is where you'd link it back to the social purpose. But if your body paragraph is in your AC is focused on social purpose, or you've just chosen, to analyze a phonological feature and you're linking it back to the social purpose, this is the final piece of the puzzle where we've labeled with our metalang term, we've given our example, we've asked what the effect is, and now we're either linking back to the contextual factor or register. So teal is essentially just a framework or a mnemonic for remembering what do we say so as to analyze and almost complete or live out this diagram. Then step 7, now if you have time for this, I'd highly recommend, leave 5 minutes to read over your piece and amend any spelling errors or sentence flow hiccups. So I like to read through my piece. This is actually a very useful skill that you need to practice. I used to suck at finding errors in my own work. And it was something that I had to work really hard on because it would get to the point, the same applied in my maths and science subjects. I would understand the content and theory. I think I was pretty good at applying it, but then I'd make small errors, and then those small errors, whilst they were small, they really bugged me, right? Because it wasn't that I didn't know what I was doing. It's just that I would make a silly error under test conditions. And then when I started to give myself 5 minutes at the end of my assessments and also practiced this skill to go back through and really scrutinize my work, like I wasn't just running the same mental pattern. I was almost trying to mark the work as though it were another student's. That really helped me just iron out some of the hiccups and really take my pieces to the next level. If the examiner is reading your piece or your teacher is reading your piece and every couple of lines there's a little spelling error or something's not neat or there's a grammatical error, it can really throw off the flow of your piece, even though you know all of the content and theory really well. So you don't want that to happen. Okay, so that is the first part of this video tutorial, running you through all of the relevant content. Now what I'd like to do is actually show you how I apply this to the 2019 VCAR exam. So I'll pop a link wherever you are viewing this video, I'll pop a link to the 2019 exam so you can pull this up. I'd like you to jump to page 24 and pause this video and just read through text 2 here. And I'll see you in a few moments once you have done that. Alrighty team, so on the left-hand side of my screen, I have the text. On the right-hand side of my screen, I have my sample AC that we're about to write. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna write an intro with you, and then I'm also going to write part of a body paragraph and show you how simple it can be. Now, it's not to say that it's easy, but it is simple if you have a process and some structure and a template to get you started. So let's actually go through the AC writing guide step by step. I may make use of the AC planning template or my AC response template or the analysis cheat sheet. So for those of you who are a private student of mine, you will be able to see what I'm about to pull up. If you are not, then you won't be able to see this. It'll be blurred out. But this analysis cheat sheet is for my analysis cheat sheet for informal spoken texts. We can apply to this text that we're looking at the moment, because given that this is a radio program, it's also the register of the text is informal. Again, I want to load up my top 10 features that I can just look for in the text. And I know it's pretty much like, as soon as I know it's an informal spoken text, I've already got 90% of my AC sorted if I have a really good analysis cheat sheet, knowing what features to look for, what I can find, and what to say about them. Now, the first feature on my analysis cheat sheet for informal spoken text is prosodics. And that's actually what we're going to analyze first here once we get to our body paragraphs. Just before we do get to that, let's go through this. So step 1 of the AC writing guide is reading the text intro and identifying the big picture context. So let's do exactly that. The following text is from an afternoon radio program on Fox FM, which is broadcast on weekdays between 4:30 and 6:30 p.m. The show is hosted by Dave Hughesy Hughes and Kate blah blah blah. Also featured are the radio station's production assistant Jack and a phone call from Hughesy's wife Holly. All very important information. Remember, I mentioned that when I'm establishing the big picture, I want to identify the speakers or writers and what their roles are. And so we're going to expect different language features, like sentence types, being used by different speakers. And that's going to make for a really interesting analysis. The text is taken from the opening sequence of the program on Friday, 15th of Feb 2019. In the program, Hughesy and Kate discuss diet soft drinks. So we've also got the domain of the text here. All right. So already mentally, now I'm gonna type this out, even though let's pretend that we're in reading time. What I'm about to type out, I'm already completing mentally. All right. So I'm going to be doing TSSM RAFS, and I'm identifying the text type, which is the radio program. And I'll be a little bit more specific here. Fox FM radio program. The setting, we know it's taking place in in a studio of some sort. You may also want to think about where is it taking place for the participants, but also for the listener. So the listener, I might actually pop this down in the audience. The listener is someone likely, now this is where you want to be really specific. It's not just anyone and everyone. They're likely, interested in light entertainment. Yes. But what else do we know? We also know that they're Aussie, likely. We also know that given what we've been told here, it's taking place on a Friday afternoon between 4 and 6:30. What are people doing on a Friday afternoon between 4 and 6:30? They're driving home from work at the end of the work week. So we could either kind of slot this into our setting, or we can slot it into our audience. I'm going to pop it down here. So, you know what? I might actually just type this out so it's clearer for you all. Oops, this should be speaker/author. This studio part should come down here for the setting, which is time and location. This is the mode. This is the register. This is the function. And this is the social purpose. So from here, I'm also going to add likely driving home from work at the end of the work week. Now, apart from it taking place in the studio, we also know Friday afternoon is the time as well. Now, the speaker and author, we have got Hughesy, Kate, Jack, the production assistant, and W. I would just pop in brackets here as well. We've got the co-host. Kate is also co-host. Now, I'll just be clear here. I don't necessarily mention every single little bit of detail in my introduction. I'll demonstrate for you the introduction template if you're a private student a little bit later in this tutorial. But it is useful getting clear on all of these details. Ideally, we want to be hyper clear on all of these details, and then we can choose what exactly we're going to mention in our intro. We have Jack, the production assistant, and we also have Holly, Hughesy's wife, who is a guest on the program. Okay, so the mode we know is spoken. The register we know is pretty informal. Now, we'll if you've read the text, you'll know that it's informal. I'm gonna operate as though you have paused this video and you've actually gone through and read the text. The function is going to be to entertain. That is certainly the primary function, and I would say that the social purpose is to build rapport between participants and with their fans or listeners. Okay, so that's our big picture. We want to have nailed that right from the get-go. And if we don't, it's going to limit the quality of our analysis. So let's come back to the AC writing guide. That's step one, done, and ideally we'll have done all of this mentally. We read the text and we take note of features that are standouts and also salient and that we're confident in analyzing. Again, this is where I'd recommend just having the short list of features. You pull up, you attack the text. Now for me, for an informal spoken text, 110%, I'm going to be analyzing prosodics. And I mentioned to you before on my analysis cheat sheet for informal spoken text, that's one of the first things that comes up. Just some other things from other subsystems that I'd recommend keeping an eye out for that I can already see in this text. Something like this, a little bit of hyperbole, really, really nice. I'll just point out a couple of other things. A little bit of creative word formation here. So this is a blend or an informal blend is what I would label it as. I'd also be taking a look at the sentence types. Definitely contrasting the sentence types used by Hughesy, Kate, Jack, and Holly. I'd also be taking a look at some of the emphasis and some of the personal pronouns that are used here. So notice how here there is a second person pronoun with emphasis that is being, the emphasis, you want to ask yourself again, run a comparison test. What's the emphasis doing? In this particular instance, do you drink diet soft drink? Notice how Hughesy's been talking with Kate over here and they're speaking to one another. But when he says this, do you drink diet soft drink? The emphasis makes it clear that he's actually not talking to Kate anymore. He's talking to the listener. That can help engage them more. And then we can link that to something like the function to entertain. And then we can look at Jack's role here with what he's doing. So we can look at emphasis here again, and also the use of adjectives and the connotations of those adjectives. All of these things are language features that I have already loaded up in the back of my mind from my analysis cheat sheet. So you can see, like, straight away, I can just attack the text and pull out really interesting language features. So with that said, let's come back to the AC writing guide. Where are we up to? We've already got an idea of some of the, we've read the text intro and the text itself. We've established the big picture. We have an idea of the language features that we're going to use. So just to give you a quick idea, if I were planning this, mentally, I'm doing this mentally. I'm beginning to formulate my plan as per step 3. I'd be going, okay, mentally, I've established all of the big picture contextual factors. I'm also beginning to flesh out my body paragraph. So me personally, for something like this, I might do phonology, also lexicology, and maybe I'd do like a lexicology cross morphology paragraph. And then I would do, say, a syntax or discourse paragraph. And if I was structuring based on themes, I'd be going, okay, I've got a register paragraph, I've got a social purpose and function paragraph, and I've got a, let's say I was going to do other contextual factors. Who knows, I might choose to focus on like audience and maybe setting in this one. So mentally, I'd then be going, okay, what are the 3 features that I'm fleshing out here? That's feature 1, feature 2, feature 3. And let's say that hypothetically, one of them was the one that I wanted to pick out and demonstrate for you in detail was going to be this emphasis and falling pitch. So let's say that I was going to do emphasis plus falling pitch. I just put a line number so I know where to find it when I actually begin my writing time. I'm doing this mentally, but then at the very beginning of writing time, I'm kind of showing you what step 4 looks like when I'm fleshing out my little baby plan or my skeleton plan that I would do under exam conditions. So I've got my emphasis and falling pitch, and I would just add a brief comment here with respect to what am I going to link it back to? Do I have a plan? And I already know this emphasis and falling pitch, I'm going to link back to the social purpose, and I'll actually show you this breakdown in just a moment. Now I might do the same thing down here. I might go, okay, like the blend, the Friday blend that we've got in, where is it? Line 7, 10, 11. So I'll just go 7, 10, 11. I'm going to link that to having an informal register. Now, I do get some students asking, like, how do my teal breakdowns differ depending on the way that I structure my paragraph? So let me show you. This is at least the way that I think about it. Let me just copy paste one of these breakdowns. So let's say that we were analyzing, I'm just going to get rid of this to be a little clearer. Let's say we were analyzing this emphasis and falling pitch feature. So I've got my meta language term, emphasis plus falling pitch. I give my quotation and line number here. My link, because I've structured my paragraphs based on subsystems, essentially I can link to whatever I want, but my meta language term or feature is always going to be slotted under the subsystem of phonology, and then all the features that I mentioned under this paragraph will be slotted under lexicology and morphology, and all the features that I put under this paragraph, will relate to either syntax or discourse. Now, if I were structuring my paragraphs this way, then this is what it would look like. So if I were somehow analyzing my emphasis and falling pitch, and my plan was to have it in this paragraph, then I need to make sure that my link is back to social purpose and function. Whereas if I were, say, to present it in this paragraph, then I'd need to make sure that I somehow linked it back to register. Whatever language feature I'm presenting here, it doesn't have to be the emphasis and falling pitch, but whatever language feature I present in this paragraph, I'm going to link back to register. Whatever language feature I present in this paragraph on social purpose and function, I'll link back to social purpose and function, and same applies for this last paragraph. So that's a little bit, that gives you a little bit of an idea with respect to how I slot the features that I find that are interesting into the different paragraphs, depending on whether I've structured it based on subsystems or themes. Now, let's say that we've fleshed out our plan a little bit. We've got something like this times 9, right? So we're going to have 3 for the first paragraph, we'll have 3 for our second paragraph, and then we'll have 3 for the third paragraph. Obviously, they're not going to be all the same feature like this, but you get the gist. So that's going to take you roughly 5 minutes if you have been attacking the text and you found good features and you have a rough idea of how you can analyze them and link them back to a social purpose or a function or register or whatever. Then from here, boom, we're ready to write our introduction. So, like I mentioned before, what we want to do in our introduction is use take all of the big picture contextual factors and just lay them out really nicely and efficiently. Now, if you're a private student of mine, I'm going to show you how to use the AC response template, in particular the intro section, in this next part of the video tutorial. If you are viewing this publicly, then you don't have access to this part of the tutorial and my resources. So I'm just going to skip forward to the point where we actually have the completed introduction, and I'll read it for you and show you what it looks like. If you're viewing this on the public, whatever public platform, and you're not a private student and you've just come back into the tutorial, then I'm going to read through my intro. I've just plugged all of our contextual factors into the intro response template, and this is what gets popped out. So, as a Fox FM radio program hosted by Hughesy and Kate with the help of production assistant Jack and guest Holly on the afternoon of Friday, 15th of Feb 2019, the text is of the spoken mode and its register is informal. The audience likely includes those driving home from work at the end of the work week, interested in some light entertainment, who may also have an interest in the health side effects of diet soft drinks. The primary function of the text is to entertain, whilst the social purpose is to build rapport between participants and their listeners, to ultimately grow Fox FM's listenership. So in having read back over that, I can tell that I've mentioned everything I need to from here. I can also tell that it flows really nicely, and I'm ready to move on to my body paragraphs. So, if we come back to the AC writing guide, we have written our intro. Next step is writing our body paragraph. So let's say that we have our plan, and obviously this is what a skeleton plan would look like, and obviously each language feature would be different if we'd actually completed this in full. But what I do want to show you is how I would turn this into full sentences, and then it would just be a matter of having that same kind of block or teal block. If you can analyze one feature well with a teal block in full sentences, then you can do it hypothetically for 9 features. And then if you can do it for 9 features, you have a high scoring AC. That's literally how modular it can be. It's very much like Lego, essentially. So what I would like to now do is show you, let's say I actually am going to show you a small part as public students as well. If you're a private student, you have access to the analysis cheat sheets, but I'm going to show you a small part of the analysis cheat sheet, which is if we come to this section here and we hit prosodics, I've actually got a breakdown of a couple of examples of prosodic features being used in the text, and I've broken them down with teal. And I'm about to show you here, this is my teal breakdown for what we're about to analyze. I want to show you exactly how I came to that. So you could either just run with this if you have access to the analysis cheat sheet. You could just come here and go, okay, yep, I see that this is what Richard would say about this example of emphasis, and then you can turn that into your own response. Or if you're not a private student, that's okay. I'm going to show you how to do it anyway. So let's take a look at this feature here. I'm just going to grab this little template and throw it in here. And just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to get rid of the rest. Perhaps what I'll do, I'm going to get rid of this section down here, just clean things up a little bit. I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to show this to you down here. So, alrighty, so this can be really simple. Again, it's not to say that it's easy, but it can be simple. So, my meta-language term, if we just pull this text up, is this one here. So, we've got emphasis and falling pitch. I've already laid this out for you. Emphasis plus falling pitch. La la la. And I'm going to give our example, what a week, line 5. Now we need to ask, what is the effect of this language feature? And again, I recommended before running a comparison test. So I'm going to read from line 4 for you with the language feature that we're analyzing, and then without the language feature that we're analyzing. So I could say, and now it's Hughesy and Kate take you to the weekend. And then if Kate says it with the emphasis and falling pitch, she'll say, what a week. Versus saying, and now it's Hughesy and Kate to take you to the weekend. What a week. So then I would ask myself, okay, when Kate says, what a week, what is the effect based on that little comparison? And what it makes me feel as a listener is she's expressing a sense of relief at having reached the end of the work week. So that's exactly what I'm going to write here. So I'm going to go express relief at having reached the end of the work week. And then I'm going to, and I'll also mention, I know that I'm going to link it. This is where we could ask, okay, what contextual factor might this link back to? And my mind is instantly going to this, to building rapport between her and the participants and also her listeners. Because her listeners, think about the setting again and the audience. Her listeners are in the car driving home at the end of a work week. So Kate expressing this, it can help her kind of bond over a shared emotion. So I'm going to pop a note here, shared emotion with listener. And then our social purpose, I'm going to link it to the social purpose to build rapport and grow and ultimately grow listenership. Something like that. So that is my teal block. That's what you want to do for all 9 features in your plan, right? You want to break it down with teal. Now the tough part is putting that into full sentences. So again, I can get it to the point. If you have the analysis cheat sheet or you have a really good teacher or a really good tutor, it can be, you can very quickly get to the point where whatever language feature you find, you can pretty solidly break it down with teal: term, example, effect, and then link. So you have the building blocks of a good analysis. The tough part is then putting it into an actual response, so full sentences. Now, to do that, if you're a private student, you have the AC response template. I'm going to show you how to use that in just a moment. For public listeners, so students who aren't private students of mine, I will mention that you can create your own response template. What I did was read through high scoring responses. Whenever there was a nice expression or nice way of wording things or presenting an example or an explanation or an analysis, I would grab the expressions or the words, and I had a list of vocabulary that I could use. So once I would have my teal block, I'd go to this list and I'd start putting it into full sentences. And then I'd get feedback from my teacher with respect to, oh, the way you worded this was really good, or that was really good, or this was really good. And then I knew, okay, that's the formula. And then I created a template out of that me and my students now use. So if you are a public student, you're going to, this next part of the tutorial will be skipped for you, and I'll read you the end product of having put this teal block into the response template. All right, now if you are you're viewing this tutorial on a public platform, you're not a private student, then we're going to tap you back in now. So this is what it reads like after having popped it through the AC response template for body paragraphs. We've got a really simple topic sentence here. A variety of phonological features can be found in the text. You can keep it super, super simple. You might say, if you were structuring a paragraph around social purpose, a variety of different language features are used by participants to accomplish the social purposes. Something super, super simple. Don't overcomplicate here. Now, this is where we take our teal block and we pop it into full sentences. So, emphasis in conjunction with falling pitch are used by co-host Kate toward the beginning of the radio program. For example, what a week. This can help her express relief at having reached the end of the work week, which thus, as a shared emotion with listeners, is likely to serve the social purpose of building rapport and ultimately growing Fox FM's listenership. Boom. Now, let's say we did that for 3 different features. Boom, boom. There is a high scoring body paragraph. Now, let's say we did that for 3 different body paragraphs. Boom, boom. And we've also got our intro back up here. I'll just cut this out and throw it down here. Ladies and gentlemen, if I zoom out a little bit, boom, you have a high-scoring analytical commentary. A big picture intro lays out all of the contextual factors succinctly, then 3 body paragraphs for each of them, roughly 3 to 4 language features, broken down with teal, then succinctly expressed, ideally with some kind of template or some kind of structure like teal that can help you say what you need to say quickly and efficiently and clearly under test conditions. So, mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have found that helpful. The last piece of the puzzle here would be reading through the piece and amending any spelling errors or grammatical errors and just making sure it's nice and smooth. Now, hopefully you have found that helpful. Feel free to, re-watch this tutorial. Feel free to ask any questions if there's a comment section below this video. And if you are interested in getting access to my AC response template, getting access to my analysis cheat sheets, and also having me help you and kind of guide you through how to apply them for all the different text categories that VCAL could throw at you, then there should be a link below this video where you can jump on over to the website and submit your details, and we can have a trial session together where I can kind of help you with whatever you need and also get you set up with all of the resources if you want to become a private student. So with that said, I wish you all the very best. Godspeed.